This video is brought to you by patreon.com/worsttake. Get access to exclusive live streams and Discord servers, on-screen shoutouts, and early access to some videos when you join now. Help make sure that we can continue to make content like this by supporting the Patreon. Links are in the description down below.
Big one. That was a massive win from the Cleveland Browns. The Cleveland Browns absolutely needed to take care of business like they took care of business today for a number of reasons, but also just to prove something to themselves, right? And what I think the Browns did today that's more important than just getting their 10th victory of the year, that's more important than beating a team that's in the playoff race with you and now having the permanent tiebreaker over them. What's more important than all of that, in my opinion, that the Cleveland Browns were able to accomplish today was they were able to prove it to themselves. I think now you have a team that believes that they can make a run. And that makes a difference, right? When a team does not believe that they have what it takes to make a run in the playoff, they tend to give you very lackluster performances in the playoffs. But what we saw today was the Cleveland Browns looking around and saying, I know we injured, but damn, we about as good as anybody in the league right now. We're about as good as any team that you can play. We're as hot as Buffalo. We've beaten Baltimore. We've beaten San Francisco. Hey, why ain't they talking about why not us, right? Like, this is what that victory meant. I talked about this in the pregame. What the Browns needed to prove was they needed to prove these things to themselves. Can they play good on the road as a defense? They only did it 2 times this year, right? Once against Pittsburgh, you lost that game. Nobody cares. Second time against Baltimore, but it was more about the comeback that you made on the offensive side of the ball, so nobody really talked about it. But you had 2 good defensive performances this year. I knew that they were capable of having those 2 good defensive performances. Even pointed out that the defensive performances that people were talking about that the Browns played bad in usually were preceded by abnormally awful news for one side of the ball, right? Either it's Deshaun Watson being in and out of the lineup for 5 weeks or Deshaun Watson being out for the year. Both of those preceded the road trips that built this reputation that the Cleveland Browns aren't a good road defense. Now that you don't have anything like that popping up, all of a sudden they're able to show up on the road. Maybe that had more to do with it. The fact that people are like, man, I don't know if the season's going to be alive. Is our franchise quarterback going to be healthy? Well, your franchise quarterback got hurt, but you brought in another guy who's playing at a very high level in Joe Flacco. So let's get started with him. Joe Flacco. Like, I know people have been hyping up the other 2 games, and I think there's been a lot of good and a lot of bad in those 3 games that he's played so far. This was a legitimately like, nah, the brother just balled in this game. There's no asterisk next to this. This might be one of the best games that Joe Flacco has played since 2012. Like, no jokes, no lies, no exaggeration. Like, I thought to myself a couple of times and tried to keep myself grounded so I don't get carried away in the moment. And I can't come up with any other game where Joe Flacco had as many impressive throws in it as this. And I've watched a ton of Joe Flacco football. I was one of those people who felt like Joe Flacco was a little underrated based on how people used to talk about him back in the day, especially what he did in his Super Bowl run. And nah, man, I think this is one of the best games he's played since like 2012. Like, legitimately, one of the best games he's played in over a decade. I don't know how he's doing it at 38. We all had the fear that, hey, man, he's 38. He might not be able to hold up and do this for a very long time. That, you know, after 90 snaps, now all that shit is out the window at this point, man. Joe Flacco gonna give you what Joe Flacco can give you. And what he's giving you is 300 yards a game. And that's spectacular. Spectacular what Joe Flacco has been able to do. But you know what's been even more spectacular? You know what's enabled a lot of this spectacularness? Amari Cooper. Amari Cooper has enabled a lot of this spectacularness. And it's not to say that Joe Flacco hasn't played his part in it. I think they, again, Football is a collaborative effort. It's not one guy's fault or the other guy's fault when something goes wrong. It's not one guy's fault or the other guy's fault when something goes right. It's been a great collaboration. And what Coop has been able to do is get his money when Deshaun was in there, is get his money when PJ was in there. He wasn't that great when DTR was in there, but then you know what? Joe come in there, he's able to do what he does. And him coming in, having 265 receiving yards and 2 touchdowns, 265 receiving yards, 2 touchdowns. Amari Cooper today, bald, flat out bald. And look, these weren't against bad corners. I want to let y'all know, Steven Nelson has been playing very good football this year. Derek Stingley has been playing very good football this year, and Amari Cooper put him in the blender. He proved the point today. He proved the point. See, people, including myself, don't look at Amari Cooper and say number one wide receiver because for the most part in his career, no team has really treated Amari Cooper as a number one wide receiver, right? You go all the way back in his days in Oakland, teams did not treat him as a number one wide receiver, right? Or not teams. His team didn't treat him as a number one wide receiver. They trade him to the Dallas Cowboys. The Dallas Cowboys did not treat him like a number one wide receiver. So when the Browns traded for Amari Cooper, there were a lot of people like, hey, man, he's not a number one wide receiver. Why did people think that? It was a perfectly reasonable reason why people thought that, because no team has treated him as a number one wide receiver until now. This is actually the first time Amari Cooper has been asked to be the true blue number one wide receiver. And he's doing it. He's giving you what he needs to give you. Back-to-back seasons of over 1,100 yards for Amari Cooper. I also want to point out Amari Cooper, back-to-back years where you can make the argument that he's having the best season of his career in Cleveland. He's playing his best football of his career in Cleveland. And it's simply because we're the first team to have Amari Cooper and be like, yeah, he's good enough to be the number one wide receiver. That's a great evaluation by Andrew Berry. Remember, he traded a 5th round pick to get him. This is so impressive what the Browns have been able to do. This isn't about limping into the playoffs anymore. We're talking about going in there and winning a game or 2 or maybe 3 or maybe 4. This was what you wanted to see. You wanted to see the Cleveland Browns come in here and play a football game that demonstrated to you that this is not just a team that's going to make the playoffs. No. That this is a team that can make something happen in the playoffs. And that's what they're demonstrating to you right now. When you watch this Cleveland Browns team, you see other people watch the Browns and go, I'm not sure if I want to play them. Right? You don't want to be like Jacksonville, who look like food, right? Everybody looking at Jacksonville like, man, a dog, I can't wait to play Jacksonville. I hope I get that 5 seed so we can play Jacksonville. You don't want to be that team in the playoffs. Nobody wants to be that team in the playoffs. But what you can be is the predator, right? We had to find out in the playoffs, are the Browns going to be predator or prey? If they would have limped in there with their little 10 wins, on one out of 3 these last 3 weeks, hey, man, you're looking like prey. You walk in there strong at 11 or 12 wins, you looking like a predator. That's going to get clipped out of context. I already know it's going to get clipped out of context. But the point still stands, which is the Browns are in a position to walk into the playoffs and make some noise. They might play a home playoff game. Now we have to watch Baltimore, right? Well, actually, before we watch Baltimore, we're going to watch Baltimore. If Baltimore loses tomorrow versus the 49ers, and then the Browns win on Thursday night, hey, man, clinch butt cheeks for Baltimore, right? Baltimore going to start getting a little tight. Little tight. That division race going to get a little tight for them, right? The Browns have an opportunity to put pressure on Baltimore. They have an opportunity to put pressure on the rest of the league. They have an opportunity to put pressure on a lot of teams and make some noise in the playoffs this year. Look, there's no reason they can't win a couple games in the playoffs, if not win it all, right? Like, they have what it takes. The quarterback is hot. The wide receivers are hot. The offense is playing its best football of all all year right now, the defense is still playing its best football and playing at a high level. We talked about what we needed from the quarterback position. We just needed somebody to step in there and be Brock Osweiler in order to replicate what the 2015 Broncos were able to do. Right now, Joe Flacco is playing well above the level of Brock Osweiler. So you're not just replicating that level of play, you're exceeding it. That gives you a real chance. The Browns defense today was phenomenal. I know that the backups came in there, gave up 2 touchdowns, so the score doesn't look like what it is, but we know what it was. They didn't give up a touchdown. The starters didn't give up a touchdown in this game. It was all phenomenal. I don't know if the corners played good, to be honest with you, because it just never got to that point. Like, it never got to the point to where it mattered if the corners were playing good or not. It was just straight up bully ball, dominate the line of scrimmage, get in Case Keenum's face. It was exactly what we talked about in the pregame show where I was saying, hey, Case Keenum's not good. I know people try to tell you that you should watch out. He's scrappy, all this garbage that they try to tell you about Case Keenum. We've known the book on Case Keenum for years because Case Keenum been on this team. He's not good. He can't play in the NFL anymore. If you simply pressure him, he's not going to be able to do shit about it. He has a weak arm. He has small hands. He's a bird. Food. That's what he is. Case Keenum, food. And you know what the Browns defense did? Ate their food, right? They did what they needed to do. You wanted to see this defense have a dominant performance on the road to let everybody know that that's capable of happening. We can still do this. The defense now believes we can do this. That's big. Right? That's big. Now, unfortunately, special teams got ravaged with injuries. We don't know if Corey Bojorquez is going to be healthy to play on Thursday. I doubt Dustin Hopkins is going to be healthy to play on Thursday. You're probably going to have to sign a kicker and a punter to play for Thursday night, and you'll be down 2 players on the active roster because of that. That all sucks. But you should be able to find a kicker who's fine enough for a day. And you should be able to find a punter who's fine enough for a day. Those 2 things shouldn't be a problem, even though you kind of worry about like the snap center exchange, all that stuff. But Charlie Hewitt's a pro, so you'll be able to get that all figured out. But the main point and the main thing today is simply this. In the last 3 weeks, the Cleveland Browns have proven to you, they've proven to me, they've proven to themselves, most importantly, they aren't just a team that's going to make the playoffs. They are a playoff team. That's different. It's very, very different, right? It's one thing to make the playoffs. It's another thing to be a true playoff team. This is more of a playoff team than what I felt like the team was in 2020, and that was a pretty damn good team. But let's face it, there was no unit on that 2020 team that was as dominant as this defense is. Right? The Browns offense right now is playing better than that 2020 defense did, and the Browns defense right now is much better than that offense was at their rate. Like, this is a better team than 2020, and if you need proof of that, they could easily match the win total of that 2020 team. And they have had all the injuries in the world. Like Nick Chubb, all these dudes have been hurt. They could match that win total. That's how good this team is. Now let's talk about Kevin Stefanski and Coach of the Year. Because you know what I'm tired of? I'm tired of people acting like there's any other argument for anybody else to be Coach of the Year this year. I really do need people to just stop. There's no coach who deserves it over Kevin, right? You're looking at the Lions. They've had a couple of questionable losses over the last few weeks. I don't think that they qualify for this. You look at Zach Taylor, he does not qualify for this. You look at Shane Steichen, and Shane Steichen's a pretty damn good coach. I think Shane Steichen's done a great job with Gardner Minshew and them. They lost to the Falcons by a ton. And what happened when Shane Steichen went head-to-head with Kevin? Okay, So no Shane Steichen. If you want to go Kyle Shanahan again, what happened when they went head to head and Kyle had some injuries, but the Browns was playing with PJ Walker? Like what happened there? I mean, like that's another one down the window. Like who are we really arguing to be coach of the year over Kevin Stefanski right now? Yeah, that's what I thought. Nobody. There's really nobody that makes the argument. Like there's not a single person where it makes sense for them to be coach of the year over Kevin. Simply because there isn't anybody. And you know what, man? I'm going to say it. Joe Flacco should be comeback player of the year, man. Like I get why people want to give Damar Hamlin this award, but my issue with this is more of a human issue with it. Like I feel like people are doing that to be kind, but I don't really think it's kind to do this to Damar Hamlin, right? Is to basically gift him a reward because you feel guilty about what it is that he went through. Not because that you feel like he truly came back and played well enough to win that award. That award should be based on what happens in that season, not what happened the season before. Now, I get it. The precedent set, they gave it to Alex Smith after he played like complete Duke, but came back from a life-threatening injury, and that's how they're going to do it. That's how they're going to give out the award. But let's be real. Joe Flacco's comeback player of the year. There's nobody that makes a better argument for it. Kevin Stefanski's coach of the year. This is an incredible Browns team. Enjoy what you're watching because this kind of stuff doesn't happen very often. It really doesn't happen very often. So you really, really, really need to just grab this, appreciate this, be in the moment, and enjoy the happiness that you feel right now because the Cleveland Browns are good again. And look, that might mean big things for this team in the future.